This episode of Dorking Out is brought to you by the 2017 Adobe, the little car that's made out of clay. Base models start at just $179. Financing is available for those of you whose last name isn't Rockefeller.
And the letter I, because you can't spell iTunes without I. Have you reviewed us on iTunes yet? You should review us on iTunes. Unless you have something bad to say, then you should keep your goddamn mouth shut. You hear me?
Houston, flight is go.
Mila, let's go. SPM. Safety contact.
From Assignment X, Amalgamated Storytelling, and thesoniashow.com, it's The Dorking Out Show with Christopher Allen Smith and Sonia Mansfield.
Welcome to episode 67 of Dorking Out, a podcast for people who like to dork out about stories and the stories in pop culture that we love. That means movies and TV, books and podcasts, and everywhere else we find stories that interest us. This is the favorite comedies of all time. Oh, and Star Trek edition. With me today is my co-host, Emmy Award-winning filmmaker and nerd author, Christopher Allen Smith.
Hey, Sonia, how's it going?
Hello.
With me today is my co-host, professional writer and author of The Sonia Show, a blog recounting the delightful, Curious George-like adventures of Baron Trump, and the friend only he can see, Klaxon 5, an alien anthropologist who's come to Earth to chronicle the decline and fall of human civilization from very close to the inside and find love. Sonia Mansfield.
It's very heartwarming.
It is.
Everybody should read it.
The sins of the father shall not be visited on the children.
Yes. Everyone should go read my blog. It is exactly about that. You won't be disappointed.
Not at all. In fact, start right now. All right. In this week's episode, we've decided to do an expanded edition of our periodic segment, Why Should I Listen to You? In this entry,
I like how you say that. Why should I listen to you?
That's right. It is a very challenging thing. Who are you two yay-hos, and why should I listen? Well, this is why you should listen, because we're going to tell you our top 5 comedies, and you can listen to that, and you'll know, are we on your wavelength? Are we part of your tribe? Do you get us? Do we get you? That way you will know. Why should I listen to you? Joining us to talk about Airplane... And
I know, you know that's like on all of our lists.
And other comedies is a man who knows a hell of a lot about comedy and Airplane, the director of Sharknados 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, Anthony C. Ferrante. Then we
What a good get for us.
It is a good get. I wonder how that happened.
How did we get that guy?
Well, first, you meet him before anybody knows who he is. Go to college with him. Become friends.
Star in his student movies.
Wait 25 years. And then you ask him. Yeah. Then we revive another somewhat related segment, the You're Dead to Me segment, wherein Sonia and I talk about a piece of culture that we straight up hate. And finally, we are joined by our favorite Star Trek expert, Jeff Bond, to talk about Episode 3 of Star Trek Discovery, Context is for Kings. We have a lot to dork out about, so let's get this on the road.
Listen, I gotta go do this report.
Are you a reporter?
I'm a weatherman with Channel 9 Pittsburgh.
That brings us to topic 1, our 5 favorite comedies of all time. One of the reasons that I like to do lists, and I think Sonia and our special guest Anthony Ferrante might be with me on this. One of the reasons I like to list movies that we love is because when you list all the movies that you love, and then you go back and look at it, it's like, no, this isn't quite right. I'm feeling different today. Why is this there, that there? And then you kind of move it around. So we are now going to do an expanded edition of Why Should I Listen to You? Where we're going to talk about
Why should I listen to you?
Pretty much. Well, we're going to talk about our top 5 comedies, but I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to warn you. We could very well do our top 5 comedies of all time 6 months from now, and our top 5s could be completely different. What's interesting is there are about 30 movies, and I think Anthony Ferrante had this thought too. There are about 30 movies that could theoretically be on the top 5 list, that depending on your mood or whatever, it just shifts and changes. And it's just interesting how our love of certain movies shifts around over time. But you never have Deuce Bigalow, Male Gigolo, all of a sudden you look at it one day and go, how is this not on my top 5? That doesn't happen. For some reason.
Wait. Why are you making fun of my favorite movie?
Because it's awful and I hate it. More on that in the next segment. Anyway, that is my way of saying lists are fun. One of the great things about making a list is essentially so you could just argue about it. And that's what we're going to start right now. And to talk to us about comedies is one of the funniest people that we know, the director of Sharknados 5, 3, 4, 1, and 2, Anthony C. Ferrante. Anthony, hi, how you doing?
I'm good. It's really cool how you actually categorized how we made those movies. We didn't start with the first one. We kind of did them out of order, which is why they're so crazy. So, yeah, thank you.
No problem. So
we do research here.
One of us does, and she lives in San Francisco. So anyway, having said all that, having talked about this, Anthony Ferrante, will you please kick it off with one of your top 5 favorite comedies?
Well, I am going to go for an obvious one. We're going to go with National Lampoon's Animal House, directed by John Landis. It kind of was the godfather of a lot of kind of slob comedy stuff that we've seen in the last multiple decades since the 70s when it came out. And nothing can quite compare. Everybody wants to rip that movie off, but that was sort of lightning in a bottle. It was sort of a combination of sort of the National Lampoon aesthetic that was kind of captured in the magazines and the radio hour, and also a lot of the people that came from National Lampoon that went on to Saturday Night Live that were in it as well. You had John Belushi and just a great cast: Stephen Furst, Tim Matheson, Donald Sutherland, Karen Allen. But what it is it was one of those things where you would hear this is the funniest movie ever, and whenever you hear that, you go, "There's no way it's the funniest movie ever." And then you watch it, and it's the funniest movie ever. And it's a movie that you could continue to watch and find new things about it. And it was right there, right on the cusp. It was right in the middle of I think probably the second or third season of Saturday Night Live. It really, where comedy just it was so sharp and so in tune with what the audiences were looking for at the time. It shifted what audiences were looking for. Everybody wanted to do these it sort of became teen sex comedies after that, even though this wasn't really a teen sex comedy. And I don't know. It's just everything about that movie. Landis, amazing direction, the writing, and I just don't. It's like the thing is, everybody tries to crack its code, and they never will. And I think that's the beauty of it. So National Lampoon's Animal House is on my list as one of my top 5 favorite comedies of all time.
Sonia Mansfield.
I haven't seen Animal House in a long time.
I haven't seen it either. The last time I saw it, for me, it seemed to show its age a little bit, but I don't know if I'm just a little too uptight or something. Actually, Anthony,
you're definitely uptight.
That's right. Yeah, I definitely have.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing about Animal House, though. It's set in the 50s, I believe.
You're
50s?
Right.
Yeah, and so it doesn't. It doesn't. That's the great thing about it, is it doesn't date it necessarily, because it was made in the 70s, set in the 50s, and so it feels it doesn't like, oh, suddenly everybody's wearing denim jeans and saying, hey man, let's smoke some weed and stuff like that. It was its own. It was sort of an homage to the 50s, so it kind of works.
Right.
You know?
It makes sense. So
And it's just like the food fight and just the road trip that they go on, and it also is just, it does things that you could never get away with in movies. Like a lot of these movies from the late 70s, early 80s, there's just stuff in them that you really, really couldn't pull off. A movie that I kind of vetoed off the list, even though it's a great comedy, but it's also a great action movie, is 48 Hours.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if anybody has seen that movie recently, but the liberal use of a certain word, it's just like it's just like someone saying because throughout the whole movie, and you're like, really? I mean, it's in your face. Nick Nolte and Eddie Murphy, and Nick Nolte calling Eddie Murphy this word.
Yeah.
Out the film.
Is it koala?
And
is the word koala?
It's koala. And so it's fascinating that certain things, like, that it was just kind of common back then. Now it's just like, oh my gosh, you could never say that and get away with it. The movie would never come out. But it's still, as a whole, as a movie, as an action movie and as a comedy, that stuff works. It's just that thing sort of stands out. So there's a few things in Animal House that are kind of like a little wonky. I think there's the underage girl scenario thing that she lied about her age and stuff like that was kind of strange, that I don't think you could ever really get away with in a movie now.
Right.
And there's a few other insensitive kind of things in the film too, but it's a product of its time. But strip all that other awkward stuff out of it, it's still a great, funny movie. Cool. And again, the cast. I mean, Kevin Bacon has a small role in it.
Oh,
I mean,
that's right.
Yeah, it's just filled with stuff like
Isn't John Larroquette in it?
No, John.
Am I thinking of something different?
I think you're thinking of Stripes.
Oh, okay, sorry.
You're thinking of Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
So, Sonia, you're thinking of Night Court.
Well, no. John Larroquette was the narrator voice on the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
I did not know that.
There's a bit of the horror movie trivia.
I learned something today.
No, but so in Animal House, just kind of like it's sort of like in Animal House kind of picked up a little bit. Airplane kind of took a little bit of that kind of sensibility. The where the kid's reading the Playboy in his bedroom, and then all of a sudden the girl flies into his room. He goes, "Thank you, God," or whatever. It's that kind of fun stuff that just non sequitur that just works really well.
Right.
So anyway, that's my movie.
All right, Sonia Mansfield. That's okay.
Okay. One of my favorite I should say, we've talked about some of my other favorite comedies on other shows, so I didn't put them on this list. So like The Naked Gun or Bull Durham or The Thin Man or Hard Day's Night, any of those could have been on this list, but I've talked about them before on the show, so I didn't put them on this list.
There's a movie on your list I have never heard of, which I find fascinating.
Okay.
Just keep going.
We're supposed to pretend that we don't know what's on her list.
So one of my all-time favorite comedies is 1985's Real Genius with Val Kilmer.
Yep.
I love this movie. I think it's so funny. It is such a typical like teenage, college age movie, but it's so smart because it's about geniuses that I just love it. Like, I love how smart they are. They're not just a bunch of dumb jerks, that are like, I'm trying to get laid or whatever, like Animal House, like,
Right. Well, actually, Sonia, there's a movie that may or may not come up later in the podcast, Revenge of the Nerds. Did Revenge of the Nerds and Real Genius, which now that I'm looking at them, they look similar on paper. Did Real Genius, did they come out around the same
after?
time?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I think Real Genius was a year after.
Yeah. Revenge of the Nerds was 84, and then Real Genius was 85. Have you guys watched Real Genius lately?
I haven't watched. No, I have not.
It
I
is
remember
just
loving
like,
it, but
Val Kilmer in that movie is just Bugs Bunny. He's Bugs Bunny. Like, it is just one liner after one line, like just boom, boom, boom. There's just like, I could just sit here and quote Real Genius all day. And believe me, I do it around the house all the time. And my husband's like, here we go. Like, This is, me just quoting Real Genius. And whenever I see it's on, I'm like, sweet, Real Genius is on. And I sit down and I'll get sucked in and watch the whole thing. So
Cool.
if you have not seen it lately, you should sit down and watch it. It is
I will.
super funny. And I tweeted out like, hey, we're going to be talking about something this week and I'm really excited. And I did like a GIF of Real Genius. And Margot D from Book versus Movie was like, oh my God, are you going to be talking about Real Genius? That's like my all-time favorite movie. And then like someone from the Pure Cinema podcast was also like, that's one of my favorite comedies of all time. Like it is like this secret little gem. Like people just don't talk about it, but it is such a funny movie.
Cool. You've got
And
a
it's
lot
not,
of...
you know what it is? It's not mean either.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there's a character in this movie named Kent, who is such a jerk, but like they don't even hate him, even though he's such a jerk. And they're still friends with him at the end, even though he's a jerk who screws them over all the time. Like the movie's just not mean.
Weren't they going to do a sequel or a remake of this a couple years ago, now that I think about it?
I really hope that's not true.
I thought I heard that
Val
somewhere.
Kilmer returns in
Pretty much.
Real Geniuses.
This is...
Let's roll them off the truck, and then...
I think you're thinking of Baby Geniuses, Smith.
Oh my God, that's right. You know what's funny, though? Anthony, correct me on this if I'm wrong.
Which was the prequel to Real Geniuses. Because I think they were both made by TriStar, I think. They were both made by Sony Pictures. So
And then
technically...
Yeah, and then somehow this ties into like Baby's Day Out. There's like it's a whole franchise.
That's Fox.
Correct me if I'm... Wow. I am playing with the professionals here right now. Correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't our old boss, Dean Devlin, one of his last acting jobs was in Real Genius? Do I have that right, Anthony?
I believe you might be correct.
What did he play?
I can't remember. He's in there. You know what, Sonia? This is your excuse to watch Real Genius again.
Yes!
To tell us, keep an eye out for Dean Devlin, co-creator and co-writer of Independence Day. So, yes. My list, I think, is a little bit more, I don't know.
Obvious?
Yes, thank you. You know what? I wanted to say something else, but yeah, I have to admit. I'm going to start with the one that is not obvious. And there's something about this movie that I love.
Yes, Dean Devlin was Milton in Real Geniuses.
Everybody, when they talk about... I'm just going to trudge on. Everybody, when they talk about Monty Python, they always talk about the Holy Grail, Holy Grail, Holy Grail. But for my money, Life of Brian, one of the people crucified with Jesus, is the...
Who?
Monty Python's Life of Brian.
Oh, no. You said something about someone named Jesus. And huh?
Oh, right. Wow, I'm really slow on the uptake tonight. Anyway.
And special guest star tonight, Jesus. Jesus, what is your favorite comedy?
That's right. For my money, though...
The Passion of the Christ is just a laugh riot.
It's hilarious.
Anyway, sorry.
My sides hurt from laughing.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Sonia
I'd give
Mansfield.
it 4 rosary beads.
Oh, my God.
I'd give it a thumbs up, but, well...
Too soon? Is it too soon, Smith?
No, that's fine. It's totally good. My train of thought is derailed but I am enjoying this. Now, there's parts of this that I like.
Is very, very funny.
Life
That's
of Brian
an
is very, very
excellent
funny. But we're going to have a link to what might be my favorite comedic scene. And one of the reasons that I, sometimes don't get as stressed out about politics as other people, but sometimes maybe I think this is the thing keeping me from getting involved, is there's a scene involving the Israelites deciding on how to deal with Rome and how to push Rome out, and they're going to get real radical, and it was kind of like a commentary on the radical movements of the 60s and 70s, and they're talking about what have the Romans ever done for us, and they're trying to work themselves up into this fury so they can go out and attack Romans and do all the stuff. And then they start listing off all the things that their quote-unquote oppressors are doing to them. And it is beautiful. It is funny. It is one of those Monty Python things that you think you're looking at it one way, and they find a way to just spin it and spin it and spin it. It is just sweet Christmas. Super funny. So, yes, Life of Brian is on my list. And if you ask me in 6 months, it might not be on my list. But right now, I am loving it. We're going to have a link. I'm going to put a link to that specific scene in the show notes so you can watch it, because holy Christmas, it's funny. All right. Anyway.
Meaning of Life is actually really solid as well. I mean, that another Monty Python great film, just so it's like pure anarchy. But their movies, the three that they did that were narrative were pretty amazing.
Yeah. Right. I mean, Holy Grail could have easily been on my list too.
Yeah, definitely. Holy Grail
such a funny movie.
And if I'm not incorrect, I believe George Harrison of the Beatles funded Life of Brian, because
I think he funded Holy Grail as well.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Maybe both.
I think he was a big fan of Monty Python.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was, because I thought for some reason, because it was a religious thing, they were having trouble getting funded when they had already done these other things. And that's why he stepped in, but I could be wrong. Anyway, point is, Anthony's got his next movie.
Oh, I have a next movie, huh?
That's right. What's
your...
that? Yeah.
When did that happen?
You can't have a list of just one.
Oh, damn. Okay. So next on the list, I'm going to go with South Park Bigger, Louder, and Uncut. The Trey Parker, Matt Stone, their Comedy Central series, was on fire at the time. I mean, I think it was moving along. And I think they were kind of hit a slight lull, and then this movie came out, and you just sat there going, what could they do when they have no censorship whatsoever, even though the show kind of pushed the boundaries at the time. And the movie just is one of the best satires ever, and some of the greatest song ever. So, yeah.
I remember going to see that, and the second it was over, I said to my friend, I want to see it again. Yeah. Like, I just wanted to sit there in the theater and wait for it to start again.
Yeah.
Because I laughed so hard in that movie. It's way funnier than it had any right to be. It was so funny.
Yeah.
And I still quote that movie around the house too. And I do my Saddam, like where I'm like, hey, buddy. Oh, come on, buddy.
I love that character so much.
By the way, I do it all the time. And now my son has started doing it.
Oh, no.
So he calls people buddy, like, what's wrong, buddy? But he says it really sweet. But he got it from me going, oh, come on, buddy. It's okay, buddy.
Oh, my gosh.
The relationship between Saddam and the devil in that movie is one of my favorite on-screen relationships.
It's so messed up.
There's every once in a while there's like a character that is so much better kind of than the background stuff that they just stick out. Like I'm thinking like Dale Cooper from Twin Peaks or Data from The Next Generation. And that's Saddam from Bigger. I could watch that Saddam do anything.
I just can't wait. I just can't wait for Trump to start singing "Blame Canada."
Seriously, it could happen any second now.
It will happen, yeah.
Right. That is such an awesome pick. It is such a funny movie.
Yeah, that is fantastic. Sonia Mansfield, what is your next one? Oh my gosh,
it's my turn already.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to go with Mother, not the horror movie that just came out. Although
Darren
I'm sure
Aronofsky's Mother!
It's so funny. No, I mean 1996's Mother, starring Albert Brooks. Have either of you guys seen this one?
Yeah, no, it's a very good movie.
I have not seen this movie.
We just watched this one again like a month ago because David had never seen it, and there's something about this movie that makes me laugh really, really hard from beginning to end. Albert Brooks's relationship with Debbie Reynolds is so funny to me. And for people who don't know what it's about Albert Brooks's character after two failed marriages moves back in with his mother, played by Debbie Reynolds, to kind of like work on their relationship so that maybe he'll learn something and then apply it to any future romantic relationships. The idea of like kind of how your relationship with your parents helps form your eventual like romantic relationships. And I just think it's so true, and like the comedy comes from such a real place. And it's just, I just think it's so funny.
Just anybody that hasn't seen any Albert Brooks movies, you really can't go wrong.
True.
If I had a choice of an Albert Brooks movie, if we were just saying, hey, pick your favorite Albert Brooks, I would say Defending Your Life. Probably a lot of people haven't seen that movie.
That's a super good one too. Or Lost in America.
Lost in America, but Defending Your Life, where he has to basically he goes to heaven or goes to, I don't know, partial heaven, and he has to defend his life in order to get into heaven. You know,
they're showing all the out. It's like his stuff is so awful. Like all of his memories are so awkward and so awful, and then they show Meryl Streep's like sessions, and it's like so warm and cozy, and all of her memories are so wonderful. It's such a funny movie. God. Anyway, I super love Mother. There's just something about it that the relationship between them rings very true to me. And I think a lot of my favorite comedies come from a real place, and I think that definitely is. These could be real people.
That's the worst part is when they name a movie the same movie. So now, like people are gonna go, I'm gonna go out and see Mother, and then they go see the Jennifer Lawrence movie, going, what the hell is your problem, Sonia?
This was not hilarious.
Like I told you earlier, we were talking a little bit about favorite horror movies, and I love George C. Scott's The Changeling from 1980. But if you go out and try to find it, you're gonna find like the Clint Eastwood, Angelina Jolie movie. You're gonna go, that wasn't a scary movie. It's like, I hate it when they do that.
Yes.
All right. So
like now people think, oh, you directed Boo, the Medea Halloween. No.
Yeah,
No.
You know what? See what happens if you just start saying yes to that. Yeah, I directed a Tyler Perry in that movie. He's a gigantic success. That and Sharknado, come on.
See if anyone looks it up.
That's right. Yeah. Actually, yeah, you will have an Internet Movie Database problem.
That could happen. Can I tell you a funny side story?
Yes.
In my office, like we were asked to like share like a fun fact about ourselves or something. And a coworker was like, I don't have any fun facts. And I was like, just lie and say that you were the baby and look who's talking. They'll never know.
Did they do it?
No. But like I couldn't even finish like my joke without laughing. Like I was like, just tell him. Just tell him that you're the baby and look who's talking. And I was like, that's a solid lie. I'm going to start telling people that.
Do that. That's good stuff. All right. Okay, well, actually, now that I think about it, Mother is an Albert Brooks written and directed movie then, right?
Yes.
You know what?
Yeah,
that's why I haven't seen it, because I thought it was just him acting in it, and I thought it wasn't all that great. So is that the most recent movie on any of our lists?
Well, I mean, what would
that's 96.
South Park. Where was South Park?
South Park was like 99, right?
I think so.
It was, yeah. That was one of the that was one of the last movies I covered before I moved to Chico.
So Mother is also like a movie that my sister super loves, so we quote it to each other a lot. And there's a thing where they go shopping together, and she's very cheap and she won't like buy herself anything new, and she buys generic food, everything. And like he buys this like really expensive jam, and she's like, you're ridiculous. And he's like, come on, Mom, it's fancy jam time. And my sister and I just quote each other. We say that to each other all the time whenever we spend money. It's fancy jam time.
Cool. All right. I am going to throw out my last one. I'm going to rip the Band-Aid off and just start going with the obvious ones. You know what it is? I think and maybe it's just me. It probably is just me. I am falling into
I'm sure it's just you.
I'm falling into the Lorne Michaels stereotype. He says he can tell at which age people went to high school by which cast is their favorite Saturday Night Live cast, because the cast you are when you're between 13 and 20 that's something
Your
that's
favorite.
consistent. Yeah, your favorite
Right.
cast.
Yeah, I don't agree with that because my favorite cast is still the original, and I wasn't in high school at that
That's
time.
true. I
Sure
hear
you
that.
weren't, Anthony.
But Ghostbusters, 1984's Ghostbusters. There's just something about it. I'm looking at some of my list. 3 of my top 5 are comedies, but they're also something else going on in them. They're not just funny ha-ha comedies. One of them is just pound for pound, joke for joke, the funniest movie I think ever made because it's just so many jokes in there. Ghostbusters is the weird movie that is 10 times more enjoyable than it has any right to be, I think, on paper. Because on paper, it sounds like kind of a dumb idea, kind of all right, I guess that could be kind of wacky fun. You can think of a million 80s comedies that had some sort of clever little or funny sci-fi little twist to them, and they were always kind of mediocre or something. But there's something about the magic of 1984's Ghostbusters where it all just gelled together. All of the elements just fit perfectly, and maybe it's just me. There's nothing funnier than Bill Murray being Bill Murray and just getting to do what he wants to do. So yeah, it is a very
Ghostbusters is a perfect comedy.
It is. You know what?
It's a perfect summer comedy. Like it's one of those like you go to the movies and like you see it and it's so funny and like the special effects were so cool and you leave like so happy that you saw it. Like what an awesome movie! Like fist pump in the air. Like yeah, Ghostbusters. It's just one of those movies, and I think it's one of those ones that you love it the more you watch it too. And like,
right.
I remember seeing like Bill Murray is like perfection in that movie, and he's so funny. And then as I got older, I was like, no, it's Egon. Egon's the funniest thing in the movie.
Right.
And then you go through like a phase where it's like, no, I really like Annie Potts in that movie. She's my favorite in the movie. Like, it changes.
Yeah, it does.
As you change.
Yes, it does. And it's great. You know what, Sonia? Thank you for saying that. That just crystallized what it is about this movie. Is every once in a while, Hollywood sets out, talented people in Hollywood set out to make a movie that they're not expecting to be the next great thing. They're just, hey, this seems like a fun idea, let's do it. And the parts come together and they are so much more than what they're expecting. Because you see a lot of movies like, I don't know, like Lawrence of Arabia or Gandhi or a million other movies where when they start making the movie, it's like, we are making an important movie and this is serious. Or like Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, that kind of thing. It's like, we are being serious and we're really shooting for the stars here. And then other movies, Ghostbusters is like the Raiders of the Lost Ark of comedies.
Yeah.
Which is, they just got together, they wanted to do something fun, and every single element of it, you hit everybody at the right point in their career. There's something about the script that inspires everybody. There's something about all the improv that's doing something. The director is at the top of their game, and it's just the movie, or it's like Casablanca, where the movie is 5 times, 10 times, 20 times better than it seems like it would be when you just hear the idea. So, yeah, that's why Ghostbusters, even though it's obvious, it's so good that even though it's an obvious, uncool pick, I'm picking it. That's one of my picks.
Yeah. Well, that could have easily been on my list, too.
All right, Anthony Ferrante.
Well,
I am jealous of your list, I got to say.
Yeah, it's a very awkward list, but it's interesting.
It is.
I saw this a couple years ago again, and it's a movie that you get sucked into every time you watch it. But it, like you were talking about, people at the top of their game. You just had like sort of the perfect combo of everybody working at optimum level. When Harry Met Sally from 1989, Rob Reiner. Rob Reiner directed. Nora Ephron wrote it. Billy Crystal starred in it with Meg Ryan, and it's a movie that just still works to this day. It's the thesis. Can women and men be friends without sex getting involved in the equation? But it's got so much snappy dialogue. Like, there is not a misplaced line in this whole entire film. Billy Crystal is just funny from beginning to end. Meg Ryan is the heart, and Carrie Fisher, who just incredible with Bruno Kirby, and it just one. It's at a certain point, you go back and you look at things like that Ghostbusters. This is a perfect movie. There is not a false moment in this movie. There's not a thing going, God, if they just didn't have that scene where he was reading Misery or whatever.
Right.
It's just so well done, and it works even to the end. Like, it pays off properly. There isn't sort of a kind of like, oh, it was great up until the end. No, it's a really great movie, and really great romantic comedy. And that's why it makes my list.
Definitely. That is actually in my honorable mentions. And there's a moment, the thing that's great about that movie that I love so much is a lot of romantic comedies, they do the thing where boy and girl meet, boy and girl fall in love, then they break apart, then they come back together. And usually it's just, you can see the screenwriter manipulating the pieces, like almost mechanically. And it's like, why would this person, they've broken up, they had this horrible fight or a horrible whatever, and they're broken up. People in life that do that often, sometimes they get back together, but those are the sick relationships. People that get in good relationships don't usually do stuff like that. But the moment when he runs to her and he says, when you realize you want to spend the rest of your life with somebody, you want the rest of your life to start as soon as possible. It's like, that is such a perfect, beautiful encapsulation. You could see that turning somebody's head completely around from, I don't need this jerk in my life, to, oh, this is the man I'm going to marry.
Yeah.
It's just, God, when's the last movie they made that was written like that, now that I think about it? Just such perfect, sweet, kick-ass, tight writing.
Yeah.
I think Anthony's right when he says, like, there's not a false moment, not even an extra line of it's so tight.
Right.
That movie.
There's also just really subtle things too, like where they're arguing, Bruno Kirby and Carrie Fisher arguing about the wagon wheel table.
I love that scene.
And then he's like, I'm keeping this, blah blah blah. And at the very end, and then Billy gives a whole dissection of what's going to happen if of what will happen down the road. And so Meg Ryan and Billy Crystal are talking outside, and then you see him pulling the thing and throwing it on the curb, and it's great. But it's just,
I love the scene too where they're playing Pictionary, and like she's trying to draw something, and Bruno Kirby's just yelling like, "Baby fish mouth."
Yeah.
Baby fish mouth.
That is the name. If I ever get the chance to write an autobiography, for no reason at all,
call it Baby Fish Mouth.
That's right.
And there's just some really honest things. It's like after the first two moments where they hated each other, and then they're walking through Central Park, and they're saying, the first time I didn't hate you. Oh, you didn't hate me. What this stuff? And then he just stops, and you realize he's grown a little bit, and it's a great line. He goes, "What's the statute of limitation on apologies?" And it's just there's so many great moments in that film.
Wow, I got to see this again. I got to watch it again. You're completely right. Sonia Mansfield, what is your next movie?
I'm going to go with the one that I think you probably never heard of, Smith.
Pee-wee's Big Adventure. No.
I couldn't do a list like this and not have a William Powell, Myrna Loy movie on it. So I have The Libeled Lady on here from 1936.
I love Myrna Loy.
What's 1936? Is that who did that movie?
It's a year.
Oh.
It was. I think it's like a year before you were born, Anthony.
Wait. I thought all years started with 20.
Kids these days. So I'm a big fan of the Thin Man movies, and we went on a big kick here in the house, and we were watching all because William Powell and Myrna Loy made like 16 movies together, and 6 of them are like Thin Man movies. So we started watching a bunch of the other ones, and one of the ones that I super love and I go back to like once a year is called The Libel Lady. And it's got William Powell, Myrna Loy, Jean Harlow, and Spencer Tracy. And Myrna Loy is like an heiress who is suing Spencer Tracy's newspaper for libel. And he gets like William Powell to try to like dig up some dirt on her, and they fall in love and hilarity ensues. And it's just got that like super fast, like 1930s 40s dialogue that I super love. And I think William Powell and Myrna Loy are like it. Like they just together, they are so like click, 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 like everything just clicks with them, and like everything is just if you could see, I'm snapping. Like, They are so good together, so watchable. And I think this movie's super funny. And Jean Harlow is so funny in this movie, and she's so cute. And I love it. I'm
glad you mentioned this.
You should watch it.
If
you haven't seen it.
I love Myrna Loy. I loved her in It Happened One Night. That's right.
That's not her. No.
You sure that's not her? All right, Anthony, go on to your next one, because I got.
That's Claudette Colbert, I think.
Oh, I thought you had. I thought you were next.
Oh,
you are next.
It is. Hold on. Frank Capra. I gotta. Oh God, this is gonna drive me crazy. Claudette Colbert. How is that Claudette? Wow. You know what it is? I think that's a. I think I'm having a Mandela moment. I think I'm living in an alternative reality from the one that I was born into. I could have sworn that was Myrna Loy. Anyway, look up the Mandela effect if you're confused by that reference. Anyway,
I know that a lot of people probably have a thing about, I want to see a black and white movie, but get over it.
Yeah, well, yeah.
It's really funny.
It's fantastic. It's great. And also, you will be missing out on my next movie if you don't watch black and white movies. Ken Burns. I know we've been talking a lot about Ken Burns on here.
Ken Burns documentaries are so funny.
That's right. Ken Burns said, in a speech that I saw him give, is that one of the things that he loves about history is the stories, and what he loves is when people try to lie. And the thing that he loves about it is when you tell somebody the truth, you're telling them one thing. But when you tell them a lie, you're telling a lot of things. You're revealing how you want to manipulate them. You're revealing what you want them to believe. You're concealing what you don't want them to know. So you're revealing so much about yourself when you lie. And he says, and fiction is a kind of lie. That is kind of one of the things that, actors do. And that's way back when in history. That's one of the reasons people didn't like actors, because they were kind of professional liars, pretending to be people that they were not. And the reason I'm going on this long screed is there's something about movies and there's something about comedies that fictional, weird situations that reveal an actual meaningful truth that is difficult to get at any other way. I am talking, of course, about Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, Stanley Kubrick's freaky, insanely funny, but very smart examination on the threat that the United States and Russia posed to each other, where they were literally trying to kill each other for the entire Cold War, and how absurd it was, at the thinking that went into having these huge nuclear arsenals pointed at each other and having the world essentially spend 50 years, 15 minutes from annihilation if one of these two presidents decided to do something dumb. Thank God we are not living under that tyranny anymore. No. But it is funny because it's a, Peter Sellers, George C. Scott. It's just an insanely crazy, wacky, funny movie that is also reveals and examines one of the just most bizarre aspects of life in the United States during the Cold War. And you can't really do it justice without examining bizarrely funny side of it. Just the weird, hyper rational, but completely irrational ways of thinking. If the Russians do this, we got to do that, and pretty soon you're talking yourself into living in bunkers and deciding how many millions of your own countrymen are going to die because you want to beat the other guy. It's funny, it's weird, it's crazy, and it reveals something important. It's just everything I love about movies. Dr. Strangelove, it's awesome. In case you didn't know.
In case you guys didn't know.
That's right.
Dr. Strangelove is awesome and funny.
That's right. So, Anthony Ferrante, what is your next movie?
This one's going to be my weird one for people that don't know what it is. But anybody that knows me, one of my all-time favorite movies, and I'm just so fascinated with this film on many different levels. And I try to watch it every year just to remind me what great filmmaking is. It was the first film written by the screenwriter who had done a lot of stuff with Mel Brooks and other films. And so this was the first movie he wrote and directed. And that was Barry Levinson, and it was 1982's Diner. And Diner it's kind of a coming of age movie in a weird way, but it also is the first really major conversational movie, the kind of thing that Seinfeld and many movies, particularly in the 1990s and the 2000s, where it became more commonplace. This was really a film where on the surface it's about a bunch of people talking in a diner, and it seems like it's a bunch of random, unrelated things. It's very, very more about a feeling as opposed to gags. It's not a teen sex comedy or anything like that, but it's about a group of friends in Baltimore in the early 60s and how they bond at the diner, and they talk about their relationships and women and stuff like that, which is all very kind of surface at the core of it. But what the movie is about, and I went to a screening of it a few years ago. Paul Feige, who did Bridesmaids. He's going to hate me for just butchering his name. Feig, thank you, Feig. And he said something that I now use to describe it. He says it's a movie about the fear of women, and it's a really just interesting kind of concept when you look at it from that perspective. It's a film that you see again, people at the top of their game, young. Paul Reiser, Steve Guttenberg, Mickey Rourke, Daniel Stern, Tim Daly, just Ellen Barkin, this amazing cast. But it's the subtle stuff, and it's Kevin Bacon again. There's just things like things that I've been trying to kind of learn from as a filmmaker myself, just how to try to capture naturalism, just because they're so natural and the dialogue is so conversational. And there's definitely, like my first film, there's a scene where these two characters are talking outside by their car, and I remember telling my DP I want it to look like the scene in Diner, just the texture and the night, the way the night kind of glistened off the vehicle and stuff. I want that kind of vibe, and he pulled it off for me. And so I've always that movie's always kind of in the back of my head. But it's just really funny stuff. There's a scene, this nativity scene, where Kevin Bacon goes bonkers in front of a church, and it's hilarious. It's really funny. Great one-liners. And also a lot of heart. It's a movie that not a lot of people have seen, but people that have seen it will always go, "That is a great movie." So and it's not a film about we got to race to the finish line to do this, or we have to solve this. It's right. About characters learning who they are and how to be better people by the end. And again, if anybody out there is a budding filmmaker, it's using this film and looking at it as this is what someone did as their first film, and how great this thing is, and how it holds up to this day.
I need to revisit. It's been a long, long time since I've seen Diner.
That is a fantastic choice. I miss Barry Levinson. I know he's still working. He just did The Wizard of Lies on HBO. But his movies, his run in the 80s was just so good. Like
Rain Man, Good Morning
exactly.
Vietnam.
Yeah.
And also Tin Man. So he did this whole as a Baltimore quadrilogy. So there was Diner, the second movie in that, which sort of had some crossover, but wasn't 100%. Baltimore was sort of the recurring theme. A Tin Man, then Avalon, which I would put up as one of the most underrated movies of all time, and just a sort of a multi-generational thing about Baltimore and coming from another country to America. Again, it's a really great movie. And the last one I think was Liberty Heights that he did as part of that. But Levinson, incredible filmmaker, just an incredible, I think a lot of the stuff later on, I don't know what kind of happened, but it just, things kind of changed. The Natural, also another great movie that he did.
Yes. God, that run he was on in the 80s, Jesus.
Well, and he started doing TV, right?
Yeah, he did.
Like
yeah.
he was involved in Homicide: Life on the Street.
Right.
Yeah, but I think also it just features what he does. I think he was picking films and choosing movies that I think TV is the better fit for him.
Right.
Because aside from Analyze That was a pretty good movie, but there's some really strange films they did. Like he did Sphere.
That's right. He did Toys.
Toys was kind of like a misstep.
He did Wag the Dog. That was a good one.
Well, he did Quiz Show. Disclosure's a good film.
Yeah.
Donnie Brasco, Sleepers. I mean, he's had some good movies, but at a certain point, I don't know. It's just like I don't know. I don't think I can name a recent movie that I've seen. Rock the Casbah I did, but I never saw that. That was a Bill Murray film. Interesting.
Oh yeah, I really wanted to see Rock the Casbah because I'm missing Bill Murray in funny mode, but the reviews on that were not good, so I missed it. Sonia Mansfield.
Yes.
What is your next movie?
I'm going to pick, I have two left. I'm going to go with The Odd Couple from 1968. I think when people think The Odd Couple, they just think of the TV series, but I super love the movie. I think it's really funny. It's got Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau, who of course paired up for multiple movies, but I felt like they were really at the top of their game as Oscar and Felix. And this is another one that just makes me laugh really, really hard. I think they are both amazingly funny in this movie. And it's another one that's like, it's just really tight.
Mm-hmm.
It's super easy to watch. And the comedy comes from real places. Like they could be real people, even though it's a little exaggerated, like, how Jack Lemmon's Felix is so tightly wound and such a neat freak. And of course, Walter Matthau is divorced, broken, sloppy.
Bugsy. Oh, that's Bugsy, another great movie.
Timing. It's all about timing.
See, sometimes you go too soon. Sometimes you go too. You know what? You're not wrong, Anthony. That's a fantastic. That might have been his last great movie. Sorry. Anyway, keep going.
It's okay.
Sorry to interrupt, Sonia.
No, it's okay. It's just I super love The Odd Couple movie. It is one of those ones that, like, if I feel like I'm having a bad day, I can watch it, and I love it.
We have geek Tourette's.
We do.
Basically, just randomly spew out things like Caddyshack.
That's right. William Dafoe. That's who I was trying to think of the other day. William Dafoe. Yeah. Sorry.
There's just one of the things in the movie that I was thinking about it when I was making this list was when Walter Matthau gets really mad at Felix and he's yelling at him and like how he can't take it anymore and he needs him to move out. And that he's like, I hate that you leave little notes on my pillow. And it says, we're all out of cornflakes, F you. And it took me 3 hours to figure out that F you was Felix Unger.
Oh man, I need to see that again.
It just so funny. Like, and the idea that like Felix is like going to kill himself and he sends out a telegram, like the suicide telegram. And like, it's just such a funny movie. I love both of those actors. So
Wow, I need to see that again. We should do the a warning to our audience. We are going to be doing these favorite episodes a lot because every time we do one, it's like, oh yeah, I come away, and the only reason to do this podcast is for me to find out what to watch.
yeah, to grow your list.
That's right. I come away with a huge list of new stuff to watch, and it's great. So sorry.
What's your next pick?
My next pick, I'm going to be quick about this. Bill Murray, there's nothing, when Bill Murray is doing his thing, and this might be his last great comedy, when Bill Murray is doing his thing, there's nothing in film that I like more. And this is my number one example for how the Oscars screw comedies. Because in a just world, this would have been Best Picture. But it was a comedy by the one of the writers for Ghostbusters, Harold Ramis, directed by Harold Ramis. The movie is Groundhog's Day, which is
so funny,
so sweet, but also a really interesting examination of how people learn to be better people, not through, some dumb, cloying, schmaltzy, whatever, but it's almost like the universe takes Bill Murray's character, who is kind of like the most annoying guy in everybody's office, and says, all right, you're not getting this. You're not understanding what kind of person you are and the effect that you have on people. So you're just going to sit here. Yeah, you know what it is? It's almost like the universe sends him to detention. You're going to sit in here until you understand how to be a good person and treat people well, and that you are on the wrong path. And it is insanely funny, but then it also gets really pretty dark and starts going in a direction. I remember, I think, Sonia, you and I watched this back in 93, and like in the middle where he starts to kind of kill himself and do all these things, it's like he's reliving the same day over and over and over, where the movie starts going in a direction like, I don't know where this is going. Not a lot of comedies have a middle of the second act montage where the main character is murdering themselves over and over and over. So it was just, this is a good movie, a really smart, well put together movie that really illustrates something about the human condition, and no recognition from the Oscars, nothing. Hold on, I went back while we were talking. I went back and looked at the Best Picture nominees. The Fugitive. Is it better than The Fugitive? Yes. In the Name of the Father. Can't remember it. The Piano. Okay, maybe. It's better than The Piano. Remains of the Day. I like Remains of the Day. Definitely better than Remains of the Day. So we have knocked out 4 of the 5 Best Picture nominees.
What's the last one?
Schindler's List. Now, it's got a tough road to
Well, Schindler's List was really funny.
Schindler's List was really good. Schindler's
List was really funny. I
Right.
Laugh just thinking about it.
That's one of those movies I was talking about before, where when the people set out to make the movie, we are making a quote-unquote underlined, bold, important movie. But, so anyway, point is, the fact
so
that...
much of...
The fact that Groundhog's Day is not even on that list as a nominee is a tragedy. Is a crime against film. Groundhog's Day, that's my pick. What were you going to say, Sonia?
That movie really shows the power of Bill Murray, because that movie really lives or dies based on Bill Murray.
Yeah.
Like, if it had been anyone else in that movie, it probably would have been unbearable to watch.
It could have been.
Because it is the same thing happening over and over. And he's the only thing that's different. And I just keep thinking, like, God, if they had just cast, like, what if it had been somebody totally, I don't know, vanilla and plain and not Bill Murray? I'm trying to think, like, who in 93? Like
Chris O'Donnell. No.
What if it was Chris O'Donnell? Exactly.
Yeah.
It would have been really terrible.
Yes.
It's such a funny movie, though.
It's great. It's, yeah, you know what? Let's not get into the Oscars thing again. But now that I'm thinking about this movie and thinking about that year, yeah, I'm getting angry all over again. Anthony Ferrante. What is your
What's your last pick?
So
for
last
favorite
pick,
comedy?
there's a lot of perfect movies out there. A lot of really perfect films. Obviously, Raiders of the Lost Ark is one of them. Jaws is a perfect movie. But the perfect movie in the comedy realm, which also kind of like Ghostbusters has another thing going on in it, and it's also one of the funniest movies ever made. Is, drumroll, Back to the Future. You have a film where, again, you talk about everybody at the top of the game. You have Robert Zemeckis, Bob Gale wrote the script, Zemeckis directed. It's just a concept that if one thing was off, it would fall like a house of cards. And it doesn't. It tapped into a lot of interesting things about who your parents are now and who they were then, and the fish out of water, where you have this 1980s kid going back to the 1950s. Marty McFly, played by Tim Matheson. played by Matthew J. Fox.
Played by Eric Stoltz.
For a while.
By Eric Stoltz. I'm trying to make a joke. Now I can't even say his name, Michael J. Fox. So no, it's you put it on and you cannot take your eyes off it. But it's just so funny. Christopher Lloyd's really funny in it. It just builds, and everything has a purpose in it. It's a smart script, smart writing, jokes nonstop. But the jokes come from characters. It's like, every time he goes, heavy, and it's like, the gravitational pull must be, really screwed up where he came from, And here's the thing where you had a movie that was so perfect that even the sequels, which aren't entirely perfect sequels, get the goodwill benefit of the first movie because you love those characters so much, and they're good sequels. Not great, but they work within that universe. But Back to the Future, great movie. You can't deny it, and it is a very, very funny film.
It is fantastic. One bit of trivia that I'm going to drop here that I am shocked by. When I was listening to the commentary to the Back to the Future trilogy, do you know what Robert Zemeckis' favorite Back to the Future movie is?
Number 3.
Second one.
Number 2.
Really?
God knows why. Well, he loved the idea of going back into the first movie and kind of having an adventure within the original movie. He just thought that was a cool idea, and it was, but it's just like, really? That makes it... I mean, Back to the Future, the first one, is a perfect movie. I mean, that is, you want to learn how to be a screenwriter, take that script and learn it and break it down, and that's, there's a reason they...
what's funny is didn't you tell me that people study?
Yeah,
that they study that script?
Yeah, they study that script in UCLA, the top screenwriting programs, because it is incredibly efficient, incredibly tight, incredibly good. And just, I mean, when you sit back and think about, a lot of that movie is a very weird Oedipal mom wanting to sleep with their son thing, but it's played for laughs, and it's kind of light and breezy. It's just like, on paper, that's a weird movie. Like a truly weird movie, but the execution was so fantastic that, it was
nominated for Best Screenplay, but it lost to Witness.
Jeez. And,
I think we all study Witness.
Witness is a good movie, but come on.
Yeah.
All right. Sonia Mansfield.
Yes.
What is your
I love talking about my next pick.
This is a fantastic pick.
I have always really liked this movie and recently discovered it again and started watching it with my now 6-year-old son, and have really grown to appreciate it. And it is Pee-wee's Big Adventure. I have always liked the movie. I've always thought it was a funny movie. And then I introduced it to my son a couple months ago, and we've been watching it over and over and over and over, and I am still not tired of it. and it's so funny, and I just love Pee-wee so much in this movie. Like I love how smart he is, and like he's usually, like, generally pretty kind to people,
Right.
where, you know, except for Francis.
That's the thing. He's
You know,
kind, but he's not too kind.
No, but
just-
he makes friends, like,
Right.
wherever he goes. Like, even like the biker gang that wants to kill him,
Right.
like, he wins them all over and they become
Right.
his friend. Like, he makes friends wherever he goes. Like, I think he's such a sweet, funny character,
Right.
and the movie is just insanely funny with like these random like visual gags and like character beats, and it's just like a little perfect comedy. And I was so happy that Calvin loved watching it, and sometimes he gets up on the table and he dances
Right.
to like tequila, and you know, if he wanted to learn some things from Pee-wee, I would be okay with that. And it's just such a joy. It's a joy. That's what it is. That's the word. I don't want him to learn everything from Pee-wee, if you know what I mean. But
Right.
it is a joy to watch this movie.
Now you want some more trivia? I recently watched this movie, Cheech and Chong's next movie. Paul Rubens plays a version of Pee-wee in that film.
Really?
One of the film side, yeah. Like, I thought, okay, it's just supposed to be Paul Rubens, but he's doing Pee-wee, but a darker version of Pee-wee. So you have to
I
kind of
don't want a darker version of Pee-wee.
well,
Well,
but
it's an interesting. I want to see it.
That's fine for other people. Like, it's actually kind of why I didn't love Big Top Pee-wee as much. Like, he was more like, he was like hot for the trapeze artist, and like I didn't like the sexualizing of Pee-wee, I guess.
Right. Have you seen Pee-wee's Big Holiday?
No, not yet.
You should do that.
Okay.
For me, that was the Pee-wee sequel I've been waiting 20 years for. I thought that was actually a pretty good sequel, and I like to irritate my film snob friends when I say that Pee-wee's Big Adventure remains Tim Burton's best film.
no, you're wrong.
I would probably agree with you in that it is one of my favorites.
I'm not saying Anthony's a snob, but he may or may not be one of those people I'm trying to irritate with that opinion.
It's just been a really, really awesome time to rewatch it again and watch it through my son's eyes. And
yeah,
I just, like I said, when you have young kids, you watch these movies and you watch them over and over and over and over, and you really start to hate them.
Right.
And that has not happened with Pee-wee. In fact, I just love it more every time we watch it.
Yeah. There is something great about that character, is that you can imagine a version of that where everybody's nice, because he is nice, he does make friends, and you can imagine a version where that would be just boring as paint, Disney TV show type, a Disney television movie type story, where it's just all soft edges and no threats and no edginess, and not that Pee-wee's Big Adventure is edgy somehow, but it's just there is a little Bugs Bunny in Pee-wee where he wants to be he's a nice guy, but you can see him get irritated and angry, and you can see him start to just mess with people because he's not, he's frustrated or angry or whatever. So all right.
Do your last pick, and then let's wrap it up.
My last pick needs no introduction and needs no long soliloquy. This is just pound for pound, joke for joke, moment for moment. For my money, the funniest movie ever made. And I was talking about Life of Brian, where Life of Brian might have my single favorite pure comedy scene that we're going to have a link. Airplane might have my single favorite joke in all of television and movies. This gives you an example. Deep, this segment. Why should I listen to you? This is what. There's something about this joke that I just love, which is every time they show the plane flying, it's a modern jet. They have like B-52 like B-29 propeller sounds. melded. And I don't know why that strikes me as so funny. It's not funny. It's this kind of dumb throwaway, but also very smart and weirdly cinema sophisticated joke that it's just, oh God, it just kills me every single time. And they show it, like every time they show the plane from the outside, they do this joke. You hear the propeller sounds. So they must do it like 15 times during the movie, and every single time it kills me. I don't know why. I can't explain it. That's what's great about comedy, is you can't explain it. It just makes you laugh, or it doesn't, and that's the thing. And that's it. That's my favorite joke from my favorite comedy of all time, Airplane.
Airplane is great. Airplane is a you know, it's a thing that everybody that's tried to do those kind of movies since then, you know, just somehow needs to go back and watch that to know that it's you know, this is how you do it.
Yeah,
any of us could have picked Airplane.
Yeah.
It is like the perfect comedy.
Yeah, Anthony, I think you said this would have been, if this wasn't on my list, it would have been on your list. Is that right?
Airplane. Yeah, I agree. Like I said, that's again, it's one of those things where, and the key to it is that they play it straight, which is what makes everything so funny and so deadpan, which is something we've kind of taken into like Sharknado, is that you know, there's a thin line between camp and deadpan, and so all our characters play everything straight. So the concept and the absurdity of the concept is funny. And that's kind of how we approached, you know, how we did our thing, you know, because our concept's already ridiculous, you know. So they took this disaster movie tropes, which is ridiculous, and they played that straight, and they put the comedy in and around it, and it worked so well. I mean, if they played it, there's some broad stuff in that movie, but for the most part, the funniest stuff is just, you know, surely you can't be serious, you know,
Right.
Don't call Shirley, you know, it's just like, it's just that Leslie Nielsen is the only person that could have done that.
Yeah.
And I think that's,
well, even the stuff where they're not playing it straight, that stuff is really funny too. Like all the stuff is the character named Johnny. Like that, you know, oh, there's a sale at Penny's, like all that stuff. Like he's so, you know, and Leon's getting larger, and like all of that stuff is really funny.
Great day to stop sniffing glue.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, that movie has so many great things.
Yeah.
So.
What do you make of this? Well, I could make a brooch or a pterodactyl.
That's right. I think a close second to my funniest joke of all time is when they're coming in for a landing, and you know, they've been going through all this stuff. They're almost there, and the runway lights go out.
Yeah.
And then it cuts to Johnny, and you see him with like a unplugged thing in his hand. And he's just kidding, and he plugs it back in. It's just the most. Oh God! That's the thing, is they will literally do anything. It's almost as though they rethought film comedy for that movie, and they broke so much new ground. It's a little difficult to see at this point how different and how new and weird and strange that movie was when it came out.
Yeah.
And a lot of it still holds up. It's not, you know, there's some of it. I showed this to my boys a couple years ago, and I was laughing my head off at the Barbara Billingsley jive talking thing.
Yeah.
Which is funny, but I would say 90% of the humor of that comes from what Barbara Billingsley had built up in 20 years of being an actor. And her, in order to have the weird turn in that thing, is you've got to be familiar with this woman and her being super straight-laced for 20 years, and then she can tell this joke. It's like this fine aged wine joke that is just so good. And, you know, and if you don't have that connection, so unfortunately some of this movie is a little bit lost. The context is lost. So some of the jokes don't play as well as they did. But man, when this movie came out, yeah, it's the funniest damn movie ever. Anyway,
I've been sucked into this movie more than a few times.
Right.
In the past year, like it was on Turner Classics, I think, and then, you know, different channels start showing it, and Like my husband and I will be like, well, it's time for us to go to bed. And then we're like, oh, damn it, Airplane's on.
That's right. All right.
And then you have to just stay up and watch it. You have to.
Yep.
Cool. Anthony Ferrante, is there anything else that you would like to say before we let you go? And thank you for coming on to talk to us about your favorite comedies.
All I have to say is just, a handful of other movies that could have made the list. People haven't seen them. Blues Brothers, another great John Landis movie. Caddyshack, Broadcast News, amazingly funny movie.
God, I love Broadcast News.
Elf with Will Ferrell just holds up. Planes, Trains, Automobiles. Fast Tides at Ridgemont High, still a great movie. This is Spinal Tap, and Say Anything. So
Say Anything.
Get a chance.
Yes.
Get a chance to see any of those movies. You're gonna be lucky. So check them out.
List. All right.
We need to have Anthony back on for scary movies.
Yes, Anthony will be back on this podcast within the next 45 days to talk about scary movies. Probably sooner. All right, Anthony, thank you so much. Sonia,
thank you.
On to our next topic.
Hey, want more dorking out?
Yep.
You can visit our website at dorkingoutshow.com.
You can.
And you can like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter.
On Twitter.
Do you listen to us on iTunes?
Yep.
It's cool.
It's cool.
We won't tell anyone.
Nope.
Please take a few minutes out of your busy day of pretending to work while you watch cat videos to give us a review on iTunes.
Cat videos!
For some reason, iTunes really cares about reviews, and it helps us attract more listeners, and you want us to have more listeners and be popular and cool, don't you?
Yep.
Of course you do.
Yeah.
And now, on with the show.
Yeah.
Topic 2, You're Dead to Me, Comedy Edition. Now that we've gone on and on and on about the comedies that we love, it's time to talk about comedies that we straight up hate. I've already explained my hatred for Meet the Parents and Breakfast at Tiffany's when we've done these segments before, and now I've decided to focus my laser-like hatred on a 1984 comedy that you probably have a fondness for, but you really need to watch it again because, damn, Revenge of the Nerds does not hold up. So where should I start, Smith? Should I start with the racism?
No.
The sexism?
No. Keep going.
Or the homophobia?
In
Revenge of the Nerds.
This is your hatred, so I'm going to let you start however you want.
I'm going to start with...
First, hold on.
Yes.
Where would we be without the patented dorking out Chris interrupts Sonia interruption? I would like to take this
Thanks
opportunity.
for interrupting my role.
That's right. I would like to take this opportunity
to give Sonia the gift I give her every week, interrupting her.
And wish Sonia, I'm putting it here deep inside, topic 2. For our true fans, it is Sonia's birthday today when this comes out.
Yay!
When you were hearing this, October 2nd, I want you guys to wish Sonia
another year. Woo!
To wish Sonia happy birthday. I won't be doing it myself, but my advice for our fans.
I have asked my people to reach out to Sonia's people.
No. Not even that.
No. My people are busy, Sonia.
That's right. I don't have them.
I also don't have any people.
So, happy birthday, Sonia Mansfield. You hardly look a day over 56.
Thanks. Thanks. You're a good friend. You're totally not a dick.
I don't know if I go that far. Anyway, happy birthday. Now that I've said that, now that
we said that, let's talk about sexism.
That's right. Well, it is your favorite topic.
It is.
I figured, all right, hit it.
I love me some sexism in 80s movies. Woo! Yeah, so have you watched Revenge of the Nerds recently?
No,
Smith?
I have not.
I watched it a lot back in the day. Like it was on like TBS and things like that a lot, and HBO when I was a kid. Revenge of the Nerds does not hold up. There is a whole thing where the king nerd, Lewis, like he has sex with one of the girls that she thinks she's having sex with her boyfriend, but she's having sex with him.
No.
Do you remember this?
No.
It's basically rape. Not even basically.
It's not
full-on
basic.
rape.
It's not basic.
That's rape. It's rape.
Oh,
Like, and then
wow.
so he rapes her, and at the end, she super loves him anyway
Now,
because he's really good in bed. You guys.
Lewis is the main nerd, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Keep going.
So while that's going on, by the way, while he's raping her, but she doesn't know it, they have planted cameras in the girls' dormitory, and they're like watching them shower and do all these things. And then they took pictures of her naked, and they're selling them at the bottom of like pies to raise money for their fraternity. Do you remember this?
No. Oh my God, no.
So there's all that.
I almost want to see this again.
And it's by the way, when her like boyfriend like goes and like gets one of the pies and sees like the picture at the bottom of the pie, like a naked picture of his girlfriend, like his reaction isn't like, damn, that's totally illegal, yo. Like, you shouldn't be taking naked pictures of my girlfriend and selling it. It's, hey, that's my girlfriend. Like that, he calls her my pie. That's my pie.
Oh, wow.
It's messed up. That movie's messed up. Then there's like the racism where like basically all these white guys at the end of the movie are afraid of the black fraternity because they're black. And then,
well, that might not be all that inaccurate.
and then there's the homophobia where they have like nobody wants the gay black man to be in their fraternity. So that's who joins their fraternity.
Right.
And there's just a lot of like limp-wristed jokes. And he's just like very, you know, stereotypically gay. There's a lot of like Asian stereotypes. There's like an Asian guy who lives in the fraternity that he's always carrying around a camera because he's Asian, you guys.
Do they have a gong get hit every time he walks into a scene?
Oh my God, they probably do. This movie does not hold up well.
Wow. Wow.
But sexism part that like I just didn't, I don't know why as a kid this wasn't like, that doesn't seem right.
Well, I think it's
because as a kid I was just like, those guys are nerds but they, you know, we should treat everybody equally. And because it does have like a nice speech at the end about like, hey, like who cares?
Right.
Like if you're a nerd, like it's actually like a legit like nice speech. But in order to get to that, you have to sit through all this awful stuff.
What was it about the 80s and guys losing their virginities? Like that whole era of 80s sex comedies. And like I do think it is a weird thing of modern filmmaking that sex seems to have been, or modern American filmmaking, is that sex seems to have been kind of pulled out to kind of a weird degree. Like I cannot imagine Basic Instinct or Fatal Attraction being made today. Or like 9.5 Weeks, any of those movies. Actually, you know what? 50 Shades.
I guess I was just going to say 50 Shades of Grey, right? Okay. I haven't seen any of those, but.
True, but you pull 50 Shades of Grey out, what else is there?
Right.
I can't think of anything. But yeah, no, I see what you're saying.
I mean, like, do they even make comedies like that? I mean, American Pie was like that.
But American Pie is 15 years old.
Yeah, it's total. Yeah. It's nothing recent that I can think of.
Yeah. No, what a weird era.
Boy. This movie doesn't.
Wow, I forgot about the limp-wristed thing. What was that? You know what it is? What you're saying to me is, do you ever have something happen when you're a kid, and then you kind of don't think about it for 20 years, and then you think about it again, and the context completely changes, and you go from, oh yeah, that was kind of normal, to what the effing F was that?
That's Revenge of the Nerds.
It is kind of Revenge of the Nerds, but part of me, and maybe I'm getting too focused, is what was the... Okay, there was homophobia, I get it, but what was the whole limp-wristed thing? Like, why was focused on the wrist and the hardness or limpness of the wrist? What is that?
I don't know.
Yeah, okay, all right.
I think it had to do with, like, the idea, like, having kind of like almost like a soft handshake was feminine.
Okay.
Maybe. I guess. And then it became like an exaggerated thing.
Okay.
Maybe.
All right.
I'm totally guessing because I have not researched the history of
Yeah.
that particular bias.
And earlier when I said it might be accurate that the white jock fraternity would be afraid of the black fraternity, I'm not saying they should be. I'm not saying that's great.
You're saying that could be a documentary.
I'm saying I can imagine a bunch of lunkhead
right.
frat boys not necessarily being the most expansive when it comes to race.
Yeah. So this movie doesn't do well, and it's just that kind of comedy that I don't know, they are dead to me. Like going back and rewatching movies that I watched in the 80s and watching them now as an adult and being like, that's not right.
That is, well, you know what?
You know, and I have to say, like, we're going to talk about some in some future shows, so I'm not going to like do a whole list, but I was wondering, like, things like Porky's probably doesn't stand the test of time.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I don't know. I remember not liking Porky's at the time. Maybe I was definitely a tight ass little kid, so I could have just been whatever.
Yeah.
One of the things you talked about, and we are going to talk about this on an upcoming special show, is 16 Candles.
Yeah.
And an Asian character in there. But one of the things you said here sparked with something, and I want to throw an idea by you that I'm not sure I believe. So, James Bond series.
Yeah.
There's plenty of problems with the James Bond series when it comes to, Ian Fleming's not so latent fear of lesbians and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Anyway, in Diamonds Are Forever, there is a gay couple, Mr. Wint and Mr. Kidd, that seem to embody some gay stereotypes of the early 70s. And at the time, and I remember back in the 80s, it was like, well, there's not any representation of gays on film, and every time they come up, this came out when Basic Instinct, every time they're on film, they either have to die, or they're the villains, or their gayness is some aspect of their of their evil. Their evil somehow comes or is derived from being gay or whatever. But I was watching Diamonds Are Forever, and I'm now watching it from 2017, when we have this whole range now of gay characters, positive gay characters and negative gay characters. And I'm wondering, not with Revenge of the Nerds because of what you said, is there, once you have this range of characters where certain groups can see themselves in pop culture in a wide spectrum of ways, do some of these previously offensive, previously quote-unquote wrong portrayals almost get let back into the club because now they're part of the spectrum? Because Mr. Wint and Mr. Kidd, actually one of the guys is Kirsten Glover's dad, last name Glover, I can't really remember. They're really funny. Like, they're really funny. I don't
remember them, so
creepy.
I can't speak to this, but maybe I need to revisit that movie.
We might, because it's not a great movie. It's Connery's last movie. It was shot in Vegas, and it's weird because Circus is like the cool hotel. It's like the new, really ritzy hotel, and Circus, as everybody knows now, is almost not even a hotel.
It's your time to die, Mr. Bond. Now I'm going to play some skee ball.
Pretty much. Anyway, they've got this really kind of nice, weird, it is a strange relationship, but the way they talk to each other, it's kind of like this married couple going out to kill Bond's friends and stuff. It's really kind of fun to watch. And they kind of bicker and stuff, but not like in a dumb way. All right. They've got a
Diamonds
real
Are
relationship.
Forever. You're going on my list.
And
I'll be watching that.
And that's the question: can something that was previously
offensive
become not offensive when that section of society goes from having no representation on film to having a big, wide spectrum of representation. Because I think eventually what we're going to want is every group, everybody can see themselves on film in a wide spectrum. Sometimes they're the villain, sometimes they're the hero, sometimes they're the sidekick, sometimes they're the hero. Blah 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 blah.
Right.
Anyway, just my question. So my hate is going to be pretty quick and simple. The collected films of Rob Schneider.
What I love is for this segment, you went to your Letterboxd.
I did.
And you said that how many of your bottom 10?
Well, here's the thing. The great thing, and I talked about this a little bit in our previous thing. The great thing about listing all your stuff is you can kind of search for stuff. You can do weird searches and kind of find, like I found John Ratzenberger, the guy that played Cliff on Cheers.
Yeah.
Is actually one of my favorite actors.
Because he's been in every Pixar movie?
Because he's been in every Pixar movie. He was in Superman 2. He was in Empire Strikes Back. He was in, he's in all these movies that I really like. And it's like, when it comes to actors that I like, he's in a disproportionate number of my really most loved movies. Anyway, so what I did to prepare for our comedy segment is I sorted all my comedies from best to worst. 30% of my bottom 10 movies, my least favorite comedies, 1 out of 3 of those least favorite comedies is a Rob Schneider movie. This is, I feel a little bit like the guy who was talking about the time he saw the Beatles in Hamburg. Like, I knew they were cool before all you suckers knew they were cool. I was in on the ground floor. I picked them out of the crowd. When they were just another band, I could see that. I have been hating Rob Schneider.
I've been hating him since before it was cool.
Since before it was cool. And now people seem to have kind of wised up, and he's not really making movies anymore or anything. But let's look at this. Is Deuce Bigalow, part of me is wondering, it's one of those things that Rob Schneider kind of shows that we just don't live in a just world. He kind of reveals something about the universe that this guy has had. So he was in The Hot Chick, Deuce Bigalow 2. He's in a lot of movies. Hold on.
Right.
I'm gonna Rob Schneider. He's in, oh my God. Yeah. He's just in a lot of movies that are particularly, especially awful. And it's almost as though you can see the Hollywood, our friend Anthony has talked about this, and has talked about how horror movies get made. Mm-hmm. And the thing about horror movies is you can make them really cheaply. So if you can line up a star and line up distribution, you can almost make a horror movie that makes a profit before you even release it into theaters. A lot of these, that's why so many of these, you've never heard of them before, movies on, used to be at the, direct to video movies, or now it's like a lot of stuff on Netflix or Apple or whatever. You've never heard of them, but they're just churning them out. And that's actually part of the Hollywood business, making these calculations and just churning stuff out. Rob Schneider is the comedic version of that, which is he's got X amount of recognizability. He's friends with, and Adam Sandler is kind of producing his movies under the Happy Gilmore banner. So we're just going to stamp these out, and it's just okay, I'll put it like this.
Let me ask you, what is it about Rob Schneider that do you not like him personally? Like, is there something about him that rubs you the wrong way? Or is it just you pick bad movies, Rob Schneider?
I think it's...
could Rob Schneider make a movie you'd like?
It is possible. Yes, it is possible. Because I was getting really down on Adam Sandler for a while, but I've seen him in... I saw him in Punch Drunk Love, and he was in that Judd Apatow movie. Oh, God, what was that?
It's called Funny People.
Funny People, and he was fantastic. Like when Adam Sandler kind of actually tries to act and do like somewhat of a dramatic role, he can be really good. A lot of comedians are like this. In fact, actually, Tom Hanks was like this.
Right.
Back in the 80s, he was comedy funny boy. He was in Big. Okay, he kind of did a thing. And then in the 90s, it was, hey, look what else I can do. And he had this entire other side to him that was hidden because he was being funny. You know, God, what I wouldn't do for a Tom Hanks comedy now that I think about it. Anyway, so he could do something. And I've heard him on podcasts. It's nothing that I have against him personally. I think part of it is he came out of an era of Saturday Night Live, which is probably my least favorite era. Mm-hmm. The Adam Sandler, Rob Schneider, Chris Farley, David Spade era. There was something about those years that I really didn't like. Right before Will Ferrell came on. Mm-hmm. Anyway, and he just he makes the most hackneyed, obvious comedic choices.
Right. There's
nothing. Well, I'll give you an example. Deuce Bigalow, European Gigolo. The sequel. He got to make two of these.
A lot of unanswered questions.
Yes, the poster is him sitting on a bench, and the Leaning Tower of is behind him, angled in such a way that it looks like his penis. Get it? You get it? That is the level of his comedic, and I'm sure that was marketing or whatever. That's the level. You know, here's the other thing. I had a friend who was who was a writer's assistant, and he actually got to transcribe a punch-up session for Deuce Bigalow, Male Gigolo, the original one, and he was very excited about it. And he was, talking to Rob Schneider, and Adam Sandler came over, and they were all punching up the Deuce Bigalow script like a week before it was going to go into production. Fast forward 6 months or whatever it was, and he said, "Hey, we're gonna go see Deuce Bigalow, Male Gigolo, on the Disney lot. We're gonna see it like in the animation building. They have a thing. We are gonna go to one of the hallowed halls of magic filmmaking in Hollywood."
Oh, Disney, this is beneath you.
And then we just had to walk out of that. And it did take the sting out of me hating on movies so much, because here was my friend who had worked on this. He had actually been on the shoot. He was trying to make connections. He was trying to get ahead in Hollywood. But he got connected with Deuce Bigalow, and it crashed and burned like a tire fire. And it was sorry. So it is kind of obvious to say, "Oh, I don't like Rob Schneider." Yeah, no kidding. But he's just well, you know what it is? He had that Saturday Night Live skit, Copy Man, who's the unfunny guy, and he takes the same joke and just hammers it. And the joke of the skit is he doesn't understand how unfunny he is.
Right.
And he just keeps hammering it and keeps hammering it. And that's what he is. And the fact that he gets to keep making movies is just, I don't know. It's kind of like, I from his point of view, he wants to make movies. He wants to be a comedian. He wants to do these things. Cool. More power to you. My question is, why do studios why do they keep writing checks? Why does he keep having a chance? I think it's because
he's obviously a really good friend to Adam Sandler.
It could be, yeah.
He's done something right for Adam Sandler.
And I think, so I don't know. Rob Schneider, it's sometimes it could just be, there are some actors like Vince Vaughn, for example, that they just kind of pluck right at you. Yeah. And there's just something you like about them, even if they're in a bad movie, that you just like about them. I'll admit, it could just be Rob Schneider for me is just, he's like the he could be in a good movie. Maybe, to answer your question from earlier, he could be in a good movie. Maybe I would like him, but I just can't take it. Maybe I just can't see what's good in him, and I just have a chip on my shoulder about him. I'll freely admit that, but it's.
I think most of America agrees with you.
I do, I do, and part of me, I'll admit, part of me is feeling like I'm standing up. You know what I like? Apple pie. It's great. I'm gonna go to bat for apple pie because it's great, and anybody that says it's not great, I'm gonna give them what for because I really like it.
Way to go out on a limb.
Exactly.
Smith.
No kidding, Smith. All right. Anyway, so Rob Schneider has been dead to me for years. But now
And Revenge of the Nerds, you're dead to me.
That's right. So, with that, Sonia, I'm going to give you the rest of the day off.
Oh, thank you.
I'm gonna pretend like
I guess because it's my birthday.
It's your birthday. I'm gonna pretend like somehow I have some control over this podcast, and it's not like it's our thing. I'm gonna pretend like it's my thing, and I'm gonna give you the day off.
Thanks.
So I'm gonna talk to Jeff and Alexandra about Star Trek. I did not forget the name of the show that we were gonna talk about.
Yes.
I promise. So happy birthday, everybody!
Thank
what
you.
did I say? Wish Sonia a happy birthday. And with that, have a fun rest of your day. And now we are on to dorking out about Star Trek Discovery. So that brings us to status check of Star Trek Discovery. This is episode 3. Context is for Kings. And joining me now is Jeff Bond. I have lauded him as my favorite living critic. He is the author of several books, including The Music of Star Trek, The Art of Star Trek, The Kelvin Timeline, as well as a forthcoming book on Seth MacFarlane's The Orville. Do you have a name for that yet, by the way?
Not exactly. That's actually being discussed at the moment as we speak.
All right. So I want to throw out a theory. You said last night on Facebook, where everybody should follow you because you have the best postings ever. I want to throw out a theory that the show, Star Trek Discovery, is not named after the ship, but it is named after Michael Burnham's journey. I was very pleasantly surprised to see that this skipped 6 months ahead from the events of the first 2 episodes. And it seems laser focused on her experience through all this. It had a feeling of kind of Lower Decks a little bit, where you're seeing the ship and you're seeing Starfleet from the vantage point of a junior officer or below junior officer, given her status, navigating her way through the Star Trek universe rather than... this is the name of the ship, like a Star Trek Voyager type thing, where it's just, well, that's the ship, this is the show, there you go. But maybe, am I thinking too metaphorically about that, or what do you think?
No, but I do agree that it seems very much that the show is going to be about Michael Burnham and a big journey for her. And what I found fascinating in this, I thought this was a huge improvement over the 2 pilots.
All right. After a few technical difficulties, Star Trek style, we have decided to bring Jeff in through the technology of the telephone. So, Jeff, you were talking about what you were hearing, the general buzz about episode 3, and kind of the general reaction. What have you heard?
Well, I think even prior to the show airing, people had an idea that we were going to have 2 episodes set on another ship, and that there was going to be sort of a reboot on episode 3. And I heard a lot of grumbling, and I think this happened after people watched the pilot too, that to the effect of, well, why do we need to see this? Why didn't we just show this like in a flashback and set her Burnham up on the Discovery where the show is going to take place through this season? I feel like I kind of get the fact that the two pilot episodes, although I think I love the story, and I think it's critical that we saw that story in terms of establishing the character of Burnham. The execution of it, I think, was uneven. And a lot of it is eaten up by the Klingons, who sort of have something to do with the story. They're critical in that aspect, but what they're bearing on Burnham's character is, I think, kind of remains to be discovered. But the important story is her mutiny, how her internal conflict and upbringing kind of leads to that. And what I think is fascinating is if you watch the episode, and this is really kind of a throwaway line, but it's reflected in what you see in the rest of the episode. But there's a point where she's with Captain Lorca, Jason Isaacs' character, and he makes reference to the war, which basically Burnham started.
Right.
And how we live in the Star Trek utopian society where need and want has basically been taken care of, but basically up until this war has started, and now that has basically shaken up the society of the Federation. So that now we see anger, bitterness, and resentment and conflict, right, where we're used to seeing everyone getting along. And so what I think is, what I think probably Brian Fuller's original idea for this was, and what we're going to see in this show, is a character who has basically at least temporarily destroyed utopia, and who is going to pay the price for that, and her journey is going to be to basically work to restore the world of Star Trek to the utopia that we're going to see, or near utopia that we're going to see, by the time we're on Kirk and Spock's Enterprise. And that seems to me to be a very, very ambitious idea for a TV series, and a great way of serializing a Star Trek show.
Yeah, it's funny, as we're talking about this, and as I'm thinking about moments from the show last night, the more I think about it, the more I'm really liking it. Because I think there is this kind of, and they ran into this difficulty more, I think, in The Next Generation, where it was just everything is nice, the conflicts were almost a little dehumanized because crew members were not acting in a lot of ways like people are used to at their jobs, people are used to at work. It was this idealized thing, which was great to kind of shoot for. But here, seeing Michael Burnham, and maybe I'm used to a Star Trek show where my favorite character isn't necessarily the captain. It's either Spock or Data or whatever. But here, Michael Burnham, she's got this really fascinating backstory, and the way it's kind of twisting her, because she's picked by Captain Lorca because of essentially because of her mutiny, but she regrets her mutiny, so she's suspicious of him for liking her for the same reason that everybody else hates her. It's almost so she's got the mixed motivations on his side. It seems like but at the same time, he seems like a pretty straightforward captain, pretty competent captain, not one of Star Trek's traditional crazy guest star captains. But there's definitely something going on under the surface, and watching them kind of dance around each other as they're trying to size each other up and decide what they're going to do, I thought was really interesting. And it's a dynamic that I don't think we've ever had in a Star Trek show. What do you make of Lorca?
I think my feeling about the whole opening of this episode was I wrote a review of this, and the whole the whole trip with the prisoners, and then we meet this security officer who refers to them as garbage.
Right.
And I was watching this whole opening, and even the kind of nervous space cadet, who ends up being her roommate, and I was really thinking, first of all, all this dark, Trekkies are going to hate this because it's so, dark and antagonistic, right off the bat. It seemed to be almost just pushing that whole aspect of it too hard. But once it, after a few minutes, particularly I think the scenes with Saru, the Doug Jones character, there's a great line where Saru says to Burnham that, I plan to protect my captain better than you protected yours.
Right.
And what I loved about that line was that you see how painful that line is, not only for Saru to say, but for Burnham to hear.
Yeah.
I thought the writing in this was so much sharper than what we had in the first two episodes. It seemed much more focused and clear on characters and what was going on. The character dynamics were interesting. Now, I will say that the only thing that maybe put me off a little was the very end scene where we see, Lorca and the security officer, and it's all grim and dark, and you get the sense that there's some great conspiracy going on. I think, Jason Isaacs is an incredible actor. It's very clear, this is what he showed in this episode is very, very subtle and subdued. This is a guy who has played everything from, Satan to Dracula to Lucius Malfoy in the Harry Potter movies, and he can be a grand, incredible villain when necessary. I am hoping that he was not cast, specifically to be a villain, and I think there's shadings of something more than that in his conversations with Burnham. I thought Sonequa Martin Green was fantastic. She's great through the whole episode. Even there's a action scene where she has to be like quoting from Alice in Wonderland, which is a kind of a writer's conceit that 9 times out of 10 you're just going to groan, while it's going on. And I was kind of groaning that they did it, but she managed to make it work within that scene. And the scene towards the end where she's basically accepting the commission from Lorca and telling her why she's accepting his offer to be on the ship, I thought she did a tremendous job there. So I think the dynamic between them is great. It's still, like I say, Lorca and Jason Isaacs is such a skilled actor that there's clearly a lot of levels and a lot of things about him that we don't know yet. But it's also, there's one of the first scenes between him and his crew, one of the officers questions his orders, and you see him, there's this look of just volcanic, all barely controlled rage there. So, you don't hire Jason Isaacs to just play, a calm, competent commander. But I think it's going to, whether we're going to spend the whole season uncovering some shocking conspiracy that he's in on, that's something where I'm hoping that there's going to be more to that, because we have already obviously gotten a glimpse that there could it's hinted at in no uncertain terms at the end of the episode that there's some skullduggery going on between him and his security officer. So to me, it's the challenge for the show as far as that goes is to make it that be surprising and not be just, okay, this guy's another mad general who wants power and so but it's a fascinating setup, and I found that I was actually getting very absorbed in this episode in a way that I was not at all in the previous two.
Yeah, for me, this is where the show really kicked in. It's funny, I watched the first two episodes. I have a problem with shows or movies that get very hyped. Usually I'll go see them almost kind of like, all right, I've seen it. And then like a day or two later, I'll go back and see them. It's like, all right, now that the roar is over, I can just sit down and watch it for what it is. And I found myself getting through the first episode in a quarter. And then it was just like, no, I think I got this. I don't think I need to sit through it again.
Right.
But this one really felt it seemed as though there were a lot of things being laid down, but a lot of interesting character interactions, definitely between Michael Burnham and Captain Lorca. And I have to say, I don't know if she seems like a character that would annoy Star Trek fans, but Sylvia Tilly I thought was really funny in a very endearing, very real way. But so I'm really being drawn into this, but I wanted to lay down a couple questions. I listened a little bit last night as I was falling asleep to the Star Trek Engage podcast, and they were pointing out a couple things that there was a lot of chatter before the show came that, this is going to be a show set on a Section 31, which is essentially the CIA of the Starfleet. This is Section 31 ship, and then they started naming off like there's what seems to be a Gorn skeleton in that final room, which supposedly Kirk and Spock and McCoy were the first to encounter. He's got a Tribble on board, which supposedly, my understanding is Kirk and Spock and McCoy were the first to encounter. So what they were positing is this is a Section 31 ship, and there was like a discussion of the different deltas that they're all wearing and how they're not standard Starfleet standard. And they were positing that this is a Section 31 thing, and it's a neat little way to get around canon because you can do whatever you want, and it's all classified. So, of course, Kirk and Spock and McCoy would never know about any of this. Nobody's going to know about any of this because it is a super secret ship. Is that kind of fanboys looking too closely at interesting Easter eggs in the frame, or do you think that there's something to the whole Section 31 thread?
I think I do think it's a valid theory, and the fact that it's one. I think to have one object or something that you've never seen before, you might say it was a slip up or just like an in joke. But to make a big point out of showing a collection of things that, Kirk and Spock had never seen before seems to hint very strongly that something else is going on, whether it's Section 31 or something else that we don't know about remains to be seen. But Enterprise does start laying the groundwork for Section 31, so we know that the idea of that existed before the time frame for Discovery, so it's certainly not questioned. There's all sorts of other Easter eggs. I mean, the one that I loved was the obelisk from the Preservers,
right?
That you see and I also loved. Everyone kind of talks about the art design, complaining about how this doesn't look like classic Star Trek, and it does look like it's from this time frame. But when he's showing Burnham that kind of Stargate, travel to different points in the universe, most of that stuff looked designed right out of original Star Trek, I thought.
Right.
And I thought that was a nice way to kind of bring that idea in. And I still think, even the design of the Discovery, which a lot of people have criticized, to me fits in very well with the aesthetics of the original series. It's more of a simple shaped ship, as opposed to all the much more detailed and complicated ships that you see, like the Shenzhou and the other starships involved in that first battle. And in a way, it's going to be a challenge, I think, to show the evolution kind of away from all that complexity towards the simplicity that you see in the original series. I don't think they're not going to go that whole route, because the whole point is you can't really get away with that in modern television. But I think that they are showing a little bit of that kind of evolution visually.
Yeah, well, let me close up here, because I know that you actually, you know what? Why don't you, if you'd like, tell our listeners why you're getting off the segment here in a little bit. What do you have to do in about half an hour?
I have to talk to Jason Isaacs, actually, in a half hour.
Tough life, Jeff.
For another venue, and but and I'm actually concerned now, because I was having problem. I was supposed to talk to him on Skype, and I was having difficulty getting that to work this morning, so I could be in for a huge disaster in 30
All right,
minutes.
well, let me get you off.
Gabriel Locra yelling at me.
Let me ask you one question, then I'm going to let you off.
Yeah.
Because I didn't mean to divert us. There was a lot of hollering and moaning about the Discovery, the design, when it came out almost a year and a half ago. But I have to say, last night, holy smokes, that was a pretty ship. I don't know if they've subtly redesigned it somehow. I don't know if they've just textured it better, or I don't know what. But man, that looked great.
It's definitely been changed from the very first images that we saw. At Comic-Con last year, the saucer is very different. They broke it up into kind of like a concentric rings, and this like a spherical center for the bridge. And John Eves, he designed the Enterprise E for First Contact, and has worked on all the Star Trek shows, and he refined the design. The design is based on Ralph McQuarrie's Enterprise design for this movie that was never made, Planet of the Titans, which would have been directed by Phil Kaufman. I think it's one of the great unmade movie projects ever. Right. And it's actually Ken Adam, who was who designed like Doctor Strangelove and the James Bond movies, was the art director. So I think the Enterprise design was actually a collaboration between Ken Adam and Ralph McQuarrie, the two of the greatest artists to ever work in film. But it is a kind of a crazy design, and John Eves refined it. That there's a jet bomber design from the 60s called the XB-70, which was this beautiful white delta-winged jet, and it's had a very triangular shape, and I think John Eves said that he kind of incorporated some of the elements of that into this design. But I agree, it looks beautiful. The introduction of it, of kind of coming out of this warp cloud in front of the shuttle, was a very dramatic. I was unexpected. I had no idea that was how they were going to introduce the ship, and it was I thought a bravura moment for the show, and I think it's the look of the ship is going to win people over eventually. I think it's a really cool design.
Yeah, I remember when they first revealed the Enterprise D, looking at it and going, ugh, That's a lot of swoopy curves and stuff. But it's a ship that I think eventually grew, or at least eventually grew on me. This one, I remember looking at, it's like, I'm not feeling this at all. And what's funny, and this is why I try not to be one of the, raging nitpickers. One of the reasons I try not to be one of the raging nitpickers is because it seems as though they've changed it very subtly from what it was last year to what it was. A few little details, but the straight lines, the diamond shape, it's all there. But this looks just gorgeous. So anyway, but I know you got to go. We will bring you back next week to talk about episode 4, the title of which I have not researched, so I don't know. I can't tease it here. But we hope to have Sonia, Alexandra August, and Jeff Bond back with us in 1 week to talk about episode 4 of Star Trek Discovery. I did not forget the name of the show. Jeff, is there anything else that you would like to say?
No, I'm good, but I will say I was looking forward to this show, but I was a little, leery about it. I wasn't necessarily unlearified by watching the pilots. I still wasn't quite sure what to make of it, but after seeing this 3rd episode, I'm very excited about watching this show.
Yes.
I'm not just watching it because it's Star Trek.
Yeah, I agree. Last week I was. Now I'm not. So, excellent. All right, everybody. Sonia's off on her birthday adventure, so I am just going to say bye. The Dorking Out Show is on Twitter at Dorking Out Show, where you can find Chris at Jet Jurgens and Sonia at The Sonia Show. You can read about Sonia's random adventures at thesoniashow.com and track the slow and creeping progress of Chris's novel and his other hijinks at jetjurgens.com. You can find out more about the Dorking Out Show at dorkingoutshow.com. While you're over there, you can support us by giving us a review on iTunes. We have a handy-dandy iTunes link to whisk you right back to 2007, where you can leave your review and 5-star rating in iTunes. We'd do it for your podcast. Want to dork out even more? Well, you can sign up for our newsletter, where you'll get all the headlines we use as fuel for the show. That's it for this week. Thanks for listening.